Mr. President, in listening to some of our colleagues on the other side of the aisle, both in speeches here and in press statements they have made, I hear repeatedly them say that we have not had a budget for 1,000 days. Mr. President, that's just wrong. That is just absolutely wrong. Sometimes I wonder if our colleagues are paying attention to what goes on here on the floor of the United States Senate. Have they already forgotten the Budget Control Act? Mr. President, here it is. August 2nd of last year, the Budget Control Act passed this body 74 to 26. More than half of our Republican colleagues voted for it. Didn't they know what they were voting on? The Budget Control Act contains the budget for this year and for next year. Weren't they paying attention? Don't they know what they voted on? Mr. President, in many ways, the Budget Control Act is stronger than a typical budget resolution. And it is stronger in these ways. Number one, it is more extensive than a traditional budget resolution. Number two, it has the force of law. Unlike a budget resolution that is not signed by the President, the Budget Control Act that we passed last August that provides the budget for this year and for next year is a law passed by the House of Representatives, passed by the Senate, signed by the President of the United States, the Budget Control Act. It also set discretionary caps on spending for 10 years instead of the 1 year normally set in a budget resolution. So when our colleagues come out here and say we've not had a budget in 1,000 days, wow. Can they really have missed the vote, the debate, the consideration of the Budget Control Act? Did they really miss all that? Or are they saying something they know to be untrue? Because really, those are the only choices you're left with. Either they don't know what they did, or they are misrepresenting what we all did. Mr. President, not only does the Budget Control Act set discretionary caps for 10 years, it also provided enforcement mechanisms, including a 2-year deeming resolution, allowing budget points of order to be enforced. That's what a budget does. It sets the spending levels, it creates spending caps, and it provides enforcement mechanisms. All of that in the Budget Control Act that we passed on August 2nd of last year, with a vote of 74 to 26. Not only did we pass it, but the Republican-controlled House passed it, and the President signed it. It is the law of the land. It sets the budget for this year. It sets the budget for next year. It provides enforcement mechanisms. It sets 10 years of spending caps, and it created a reconciliation-like super committee to address entitlement and tax reforms. Now, that super committee didn't come up with a result, but they were established in the Budget Control Act. And they were given the authority, just like a reconciliation provision would, to come back with a package that could not be filibustered and could not be altered and could pass with a simple majority. Mr. President, that is the fact. So if we hear colleagues come out and say one more time, we have not had a budget for 1,000 days, I hope somebody will have the sense to stand up and say, really? Well, what was the Budget Control Act about? What was this legislation that passed not only the United States Senate on a vote of 74 to 26, but passed the House of Representatives that's controlled by the other party and was signed by the President of the United States? Mr. President, Republican rhetoric aside, Congress did pass a budget, not through the normal way of a budget resolution, but through an actual law. The Republican-controlled House passed it, the Democratic Senate passed it, and the President signed it. The Budget Control Act set 10 years of spending caps, established a 2-year deeming resolution to enforce spending levels, and it created a reconciliation-like process to consider entitlement and tax reform. Mr. President, I hope we have laid this issue to rest. So now if I hear colleagues come out and say that we've not had a budget for 1,000 days, I will know that they've been put on fair notice. Maybe they missed somehow what they were voting on back in August. Maybe they gapped out. Maybe they forgot. But you know what? They voted for it. Every member of the Senate voted on the Budget Control Act. 74 to 26, added up, that's 100. Everybody was here. And if they didn't know what they were voting on, now they do. So if I hear another assertion that there's not a budget for 1,000 days, I will know, and the listeners will know, that somebody's not telling the truth. I thank the chair and yield the floor.